And as a result of our decisions, we are in a scary place. And again, I want to preface this by letting you all know that just because you're in a dark place does not mean that you have sinned or done wrong. All right? But sometimes we are in difficult situations because of decisions that we have made, bad habits, poor decisions, and sin. And so, anytime that we disobey the shepherd, anytime that we wander away from the shepherd, there's going to be this darkness in our souls because we're out of fellowship with us. The shepherd can't reach out with his staff if we're not near him and bring us that reassurance of his closeness. And so in those moments of, oh no, what have we done? What should I do now? How do we respond? In other words, in those dark valleys, as a sheep, can we look to our shepherd and receive the same kind of comfort that we receive when it's not our fault, all right? Or are we kind of on our own, left to figure things out, and the shepherd is not involved? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we respond in dark valleys that we have put ourselves in? Because I'm guessing we have all put ourselves in some dark valleys from time to time. In a relationship where we said hurtful words, we've made bad financial decisions, we've gotten into a habit that we just can't break, and we look around at ourselves and we say, how did I get here? What did I do? This is not where I want to be. And we see that we've made a series of decisions that have brought us to this point. And in those moments, that's what we want to talk about today. What does the shepherd, what's our relationship with the shepherd look like in those moments? And David himself knew very well what this looked like, because David made a series of bad decisions early on in his kingship that put him in a valley of the shadow of death as well. And so I just want to bring us to this point in 2 Samuel. If you want to turn your Bibles, you can. In 2 Samuel chapter 11, we read just a fascinating and also a little bit terrifying passage from David's life. Now let's remember that David has been anointed by God to be king. He is God's, his chosen king. God loves him so much, and God has given him great success. And at this point, David is now king over Israel. Things are going very well. Enemies are being conquered left and right. His kingdom is being expanded. And so we read in chapter 11 that one springtime, when kings normally go off to war, David sent his men off to war, but David decided to stay home and take it easy. And we'll pick up the story in verse 2. It happened late one afternoon when David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house, that he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman. And one said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" And David said, "Oh, she's already married, never mind." No, that's not what David said. So David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Now she had been purifying herself from her uncleanness, and then she returned to her house. And verse 5 says, "And the woman conceived, and she sent and told David, 'I am pregnant.'" And all of a sudden, David has a, "Oh no, what have I done?" kind of a moment. What have I done? Sin and sin decisions happen when we step outside the boundaries that God has for us. He puts us in a pasture, all right, that has all that we need for our lives and to be in relationship with Him. But at some point in our lives, all of us wander away from that pasture. We all decide that we don't like the boundaries that God has placed, whether it's financial boundaries or relationship boundaries or whatever it might be, and we step outside of those boundaries. We might think that we deserve it. Perhaps in David's mind, he thought, listen, I am king. I can do whatever I want. This nation is mine, and no one can stop me. I don't know what was going on in David's mind. All we know is that he ignored some pretty significant warning signs, like the fact that this woman was married, and the fact that maybe he should have been out to war with his men rather than taking afternoon naps and sleeping with other men's wives. If you don't learn anything else today, just learn that, all right? Afternoon naps lead to adultery. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. But there are plenty of warning signs in David's own life that he shouldn't go down this journey in this path, and yet he continues to disobey. At this point, David already has 3 wives, but he's not content with what he has. And so he realizes at this point, I have made a mistake. I've made a mistake, and he believes another lie from the enemy. And I bet this is something that all of us have heard as well, whispered in our minds and in our hearts when we look around and realize that we're in a bad spot, and it's because we've made some bad decisions. And this is the lie that the devil will tell us in those moments. You've got yourself into this mess. Now you get yourself out of this mess. You know, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, is back in the pasture with the other sheep, taking good care of them. He's waiting for you to return, all right? But don't bother him, all right? You've gotten yourself into this mess. You figure it out. And so we try in our own strength to solve our bad habits, to mend relationships, but we don't seek out the Father or the Shepherd's help in these matters. And this is what David does. David tries to solve his own problem, and things go from bad to worse. So David finds out, well, he already knows that Bathsheba is married to a man named Uriah. Now get this, Uriah is not home because Uriah is out fighting David's war, all right? So while Uriah is out fighting for David, David is sleeping with his wife. And so David sends for Uriah, and he says, Uriah, come back from the front lines. Uriah comes back. David entertains him in the king's palace and then says, why don't you go home for the night? And David's hoping that Uriah will go home, sleep with his wife, and not know that the baby is not his, but it's actually David's. But Uriah, here's the thing about Uriah. Uriah is a righteous man. And Uriah says, no, King David, it would not be right for me to go home and enjoy a relationship with my wife while all the other men are out fighting your war. So he sleeps on the porch that night. Well, this completely foils David's plan. And so the next day, David brings him back to the castle, wines and dines him. It says he gets drunk. And he's like, well, now that he's drunk, maybe now he'll go back and sleep with his wife. But again, Uriah says, no, I'm just going to sleep on the porch. And finally, David says, fine. He writes a letter to the commander of his army and sends it back with Uriah. Uriah doesn't know what the letter says because Uriah's a good guy. If you give somebody a letter, you don't read it, right? And so Uriah hands the letter back to the commander, and the letter says, put Uriah in the absolutely worst part of the battle, where the fighting is the most severe, all right? And then when things are at their worst, leave him to die. And so Uriah goes out, and he gets put in the front lines where the battle is the worst. They are storming this castle, and the archers start to shoot down on them, and Uriah is killed. David then goes and marries Bathsheba and thinks that he has solved this problem on his own. Solved the problem on his own. But as you can imagine, God is not too happy with David. God is not too happy. And so God sends a prophet to David to address this. Now remember, a few weeks ago we said that God is a good shepherd. And it is the nature of a good shepherd to pursue his sheep. If a shepherd sees that one of his sheep is gone, he goes after it, if he's a good shepherd. And God is a good shepherd, so it's in his nature to go after David, and it's in his nature to pursue us when we find ourselves in tough spots as well, even if we have sinned. He doesn't just say, yeah, go figure it out on your own. He says, I'm coming after you. Maybe you've experienced this. You know in your heart, your conscience bothers you, and you can sense God moving in other people, trying to bring you back. And so Nathan shows up, and Nathan is a prophet. You can imagine the terrifying job that Nathan has, to go to the king of Israel and basically chastise him on behalf of God. So Nathan has a very creative way of doing this. He goes to David, and he says, David, I've got a story to tell you. And David says, okay, tell me a story. And he's like, well, there was this poor man, and this poor man had one sheep, and his family loved this sheep. They raised it from when it was a little lamb, and it was like a member of their own family. David, as a former shepherd himself, knows the unique relationship that a shepherd can have with a sheep, and so he's catching on to this. And then Nathan says, now there's a neighbor, and the neighbor is very rich. He's got all kinds of money. He has all kinds of flocks and herds, and he's got everything he needs. And one day, the neighbor has a visitor come. And he wants to wine and dine the visitor, so he goes and he prepares a sheep to eat. But instead of taking one from his own flock, he takes the one from the poor guy. He kills his sheep and serves it to his visitor. And David is furious. Well, what an outlandish thing. That man should be punished. He needs to pay back. I forget how many folds. You can read it in 2 Samuel. And at the conclusion of that, Nathan looks at David and says, David, that's you. You're that man. God has blessed you beyond measure, and yet in your selfishness, you went and took another man's wife. Do you ever notice sometimes that you get angry at the sin in other people when it reflects the sin in your own heart? Maybe you lose your temper and you get angry at someone else for losing their temper. You can't help but gossip, but you get angry when other people talk about you. And in David's own life, we see the same thing. He is so furious at this imaginary man when really it was just a reflection of his own life as well. In these moments, sometimes we are tempted to believe another lie that Satan will whisper to us, and it is this lie. You have wandered too far. You are hopelessly lost. The valley is insurmountable. The shepherd cannot reach you. You have made too many bad decisions to ever find your way back to the flock. But when we believe that, and I agree that we can find ourselves in situations that on our own we cannot find a way out. But when we believe that, we limit the shepherd. We're saying, God, I don't believe that you're big enough or strong enough or filled with enough grace to reach down into my life and rescue me. Or maybe we believe another lie. And this lie is even more pervasive. It says this: even if you could somehow figure your way out of your mess, even if you could somehow make it back to the flock where the shepherd is disappointed in you. He doesn't want you around. You can hang out, but you're got to stay on the fringes of the flock. You're a second-class sheep. You're the black sheep of the family. He'll never trust you again. Your relationship is broken irreparably. That's another lie that we believe as well in some moments. David's heart at this point is completely broken. He is shattered. And one of the interesting things about the Bible is that the Psalms that we love to read are written out of places in David's own life. And so we can turn to Psalm 51 because David is a poet, and in the middle of his brokenness and recognizing how deeply he has grieved the shepherd, how far he has wandered away, how much hurt he has caused not only to himself but to other people, to Bathsheba, to Uriah, to their family. In that moment, in his brokenness, he writes this psalm, Psalm 51. We're just going to read the first 12 verses. Just recognize that these verses, it says that David writes this after Nathan the prophet had gone to him. So Nathan leaves. David is just deeply sad at his decisions, and he writes this: have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love, according to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin. For I know that my transgressions and my sin is ever before you. Against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so that you may be justified in your words and blameless in your judgment. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. But you delight in truth in the inward being, and you teach me wisdom in the secret place. Purge me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones that you have broken rejoice. Hide your face from my sins and blot out all my iniquities. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with a willing spirit. Do you ever wonder how to respond to the shepherd when he reaches out and you want to come back to him? This is how you do it. David doesn't make excuses for himself. He doesn't say, well, God, she was just so beautiful. She should have known not to be out taking a bath in the middle of the afternoon. Doesn't try to excuse away his bad behavior. Doesn't try to fix it on his own. He just, in brokenness, goes before the Father and says, I need forgiveness. Wash me, and I will be clean. His honestness about what he's done, a brokenness in his own life, recognizing that forgiveness can only come from a shepherd, and ask God to put a new heart in him, You know, some of us have been in some, maybe even today you're in some valleys in your life because of some decisions that you've made. Even now, you've wrestled with knowing how to respond to God out of this place of sin. And when you look at God, some of us have misconceptions. We see an angry God, we see a disappointed God. Or do we see what the Bible tells us? Do we see a compassionate shepherd longing to find you and to bring you home? One of my favorite authors, Brennan Manning, he writes this, and I think this is beautiful. He says, "It deeply pleases the Father when we allow his compassion to be greater than our sinfulness." It deeply pleases our Father when we allow his compassion to be greater than our sinfulness. God is not limited by what you've done. I'm guessing today that none of you have killed someone in order to cover up your adultery. I mean, I'm hoping that's not the case. But if it has, the Bible says that we follow a shepherd who can forgive sin like this. Now, I think that there's a personal piece to this. Maybe God is speaking to your heart today about some places that he's calling you back to him in. As a church, I think an important part of the commonplace, and a thing that we do well, and I'm proud of us in this, and in a good kind of proud, is that we need to always be a place where lost sheep are welcome. Many churches alienate people because they're places where there's this angry, judgmental flock of sheep, and people come in whose lives are a mess because all of us have messy lives, and when they show up at this place, at this church, instead of being greeted by love, they're greeted instead by judgmental looks and a flock of sheep that is kind of disappointed that they've shown up. And that's not the call and the commonplace. We need to be a safe place where that the shepherd can do a healing work in the lives of the sheep. Because they're going to come to us wounded and weak and malnourished from being away from the shepherd's care. It's going to take time for the lost to be made strong in the loving, tender care of a good shepherd. So let's be the kind of church where the broken and the lost can find a place to heal. I want to invite the worship team to come on up. Today is, we're going to celebrate communion. Now, communion is remembering the wounds that Jesus suffered on our behalf so that our sinful, broken hearts could be healed. This is a beautiful day to celebrate communion. The way that we celebrate communion at the Commonplace, if you've never been here before, is we're going to hand out little pieces of bread and little cups of juice, and just hold on to those until everybody has been served. And then together we will eat and drink in remembrance of what Jesus has done for us. But as I was preparing for this message, I was reminded of an incredible verse in the book of Isaiah that Isaiah wrote even before Jesus showed up. Listen to these words that Isaiah prophesies about Jesus, the Good Shepherd. Years before Jesus shows up, he says this, "Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, and yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted." In verse 5, "But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed." Verse 6 says this, "All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned, everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all." So communion is a time when, as the people of God, we come together and we celebrate, but also, in a way, we kind of mourn the fact that we have hurt God, but we celebrate the fact that his wounds have taken all of our transgressions and have offered forgiveness to us as well. And so, as the bread and the juice are being handed out, I just ask you to quiet your heart and to ask the Lord what places you need to move closer to him, where you need to allow his forgiveness to reach into your soul and do their healing work.
I'm going to sing a song for you guys this morning. The words aren't up there, but as you sit there and think and listen to the song. Gotta give you what I have today. These scattered ashes that I hid away. I lay it all at your feet. lay it down. Oh Lord, I lay it down. Oh, let this be where I die. My Lord, with thee crucified. Be lifted high as my kingdom's goal, once and for all, once and for all. There is victory in my Savior's arms, and crimson flowing from the cross. Pour over me, yeah. Oh, let this be where I die. My Lord, with thee crucified. Be lifted high as my kingdom's goal, once and for all, once and for all. Oh Lord, I lay it down. Oh Lord, I lay it down. Help me to lay it down. Oh Lord, I lay it down. Oh, let this be where I lie. My Lord, with thee crucified. Be lifted high, thy kingdom's goal, once and for all, once and for all, once and for all, once and for all.
As Jesus was celebrating the Last Supper with his disciples, he took bread and he gave it to them, and he said, "This bread represents my body, which is given for you. So as we eat this, let's remember the sacrifice of Jesus." He took the cup and he said, "This cup is a new covenant in my blood. As often as you drink this, you do this in remembrance of me." So as we drink together, let's remember the sacrifice of Jesus. If you find yourself in a place today where you're kind of like that sheep that's never found its way to the shepherd's arms, I would love to be able to lead you to that point. You're more than welcome to talk to me after church or to fill out a connection card, and we can follow up later on. But know that the shepherd is there. He's waiting for you. He wants you to be ready to rescue you if you will allow him to. Let's just pray together. Jesus, we celebrate what you have done for us on our behalf. That through your wounds, we are made whole, that you heal us. I pray today that as a church, we would be a place where people can find healing through Jesus. We can't heal them, Jesus, but you can. And so let us be a safe place where people can find healing in Christ. I also pray that anyone here today needs a touch from you, a chance to be made right. Maybe they need to restore a relationship in their lives and need to have a conversation with someone else. I ask that you give them the boldness and the grace to make that decision. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.